And it is Friday. It seems like a good time here at Justice TV to talk to our favorite, Doug Weinstein. Oh, hey, there's Linda Kenny Baden as well.
Yeah, and we have a new member too, Michael Bryant.
Yeah, Mimi. Yeah,
Mimi with the Mini Yorkshire, and Mimi, tell us what the flag is, and we'll talk about it after. But we don't want to keep Doug waiting because it is Friday, and he's cash, and we're wait a second, I missed the memo.
Good evening, y'all. Yeah, good evening. I'm sorry for my terrible lighting and my casual look, but
no, we love the casual look. Look, this is a real world. I'm sure the jury is coming into the courtroom casual, right? No one's getting dressed these days.
They come in casual and bundled in blankets.
Oh, geez, that cold. Oh, boy.
It's that cold. Yeah,
oh, boy. Okay.
Wow. Cold.
Yeah. What time did you guys get done today? You were going over exhibits, that kind of stuff, right?
I wasn't there all day, but the prosecution was still there when I left, working on it. We were there for many hours working on getting the exhibits in order. It was tedious, and it's the glamorous stuff like you see on Suits that you guys I'm sure know about. But imagine like trying to organize exhibits after a trial that opening was a year ago. You know, it's a year of witnesses.
That's right. Yeah, it's very hard. That, and I always love when people say, "Oh, stay for the charge." When the charge is given, I'm like, I want to get out of there when the charge is given. I'll come back.
She has to read the indictment again to these folks.
Speaking of the indictment, this is a perfect time for me to say I screwed up. We were looking at the indictment to see who, when you and Max Shart, your clients, were the ones remaining. I was trying to whittle down which charges were left, and I grabbed the wrong indictment. And I actually would have been nice if I was right, because it only had the 2 original counts on it against Diamante Kendrick. But now, of course, they've added a few more in the August version of the indictment. So thanks to Adam Scott, who pointed that out to me, and I just grabbed the wrong one. So my bad. So with that in mind and the instructions in mind, do you anticipate to which ones, there's always instructions. Everybody's like, yeah, fine. Yeah. And then, whoa, wait a minute. What do you expect to battle on?
We're meeting this weekend to try to come up to agreement, like you say, on a lot of the instructions. The battle is going to be over RICO. That will be a big battle. I'm leading it from the defense side. The really Georgia's expert on Georgia RICO, John Floyd, will be mostly handling it, I think, for the state. He's highly regarded, and it will be challenging because he's pretty much regarded as the expert on RICO.
Right. So that's going to be difficult, I guess. RICO is just so uninclusive. It's just so ridiculous what you get caught in that basket. I mean, I felt for you sitting there listening to all this stuff about Shannon Stillwell and this homicide. And I said, well, Doug was, we talked last night, Doug was like leaning back in his chair, having a soda. It's like, what am I doing? The question was, what's his nickname? I know 2-3 years, before. That was it. That was the only mention of your client, which is good for you.
Yeah, this particular witness that's on the stand right now, investigator Viverito, really, she's not going to have much at all to say about my client. And that's, and so I just have to sit there. That's not so much I guess part of that is for the RICO, of course, and part of it's because of the murder of Mr. Drinks. Oh, no, I can say that on here. The murder of Mr. Drinks. And but we heard from Viverito about a host of people that are not part of this case, right? Mr. or no longer part of, sitting there. Mr. Huey, Khalif Adams, Jeffrey Williams. I have a whole list that she has mentioned that are not sitting in that courtroom.
Yeah, no, I saw that. I was like, well, wait a second, where is it? And then I had printed everything. Like when you're going through this, I'd printed everything, all the screenshots and everything. I didn't see anything regarding your client, and I heard a lot about. She said she does social media trolling, basically, and she doesn't troll your client. There's nothing there. It's all grief pictures that were by other people when one of the members of the gang, if it is a gang, which sounds like. There's not much of a fight on that anymore. We're just saying, hey, wait a second, we mourn him. And so what does that mean? And all.
I mean,
So
my client has served time for gang activity back, I guess he spent 5 years in prison for that. But when he got out in 2020, all he did was focus on his music. And Viverito is pretty much just speaking on post 2020 stuff. So you're not going to really hear much about my client because he's recording music since 2020, and that's been his life. So you're not going to hear much from her. Pretty much the witnesses against the case against my client, to the extent there was one, everything's been presented that's going to be presented for the most part.
Yeah. Let's talk about Viverito for just a second here. And I was curious about her name because just Viverito is like Viv is life and an Ito is small. I thought it meant small life. So I looked it up and it's a little more flattering. It's actually lively little one. That's
I like that name.
That's what Viverito is. She's also camera shy, apparently. What's the deal with that?
Well, I in general, unless they can give me what I feel is a good reason, and that's based on the court's order that there's some safety issue, then I object whenever they want to put on a witness and not put them on camera. And of course, I'm not the decision maker here; it's the judge. And so, at least in my view, given that she's all over the internet, her images, including on the Fulton County DA website, I argued that she should be shown, but I lost that argument at the bench, obviously. And I can't go into all the reasons but they had reasons that they felt she shouldn't be shown.
I mean, is she in danger? Is she in danger?
I'm not. I can't get into it, but they had their reasons. The judge sided with them, and so she's not being shown.
All right. It's funny too because from her testimony, you get the impression she would like to be shown. You know what I mean? She's very kind of flamboyant and adds a lot of extra information that maybe is inappropriate. So it's contrary to not wanting to be on camera. But all right.
Well,
she's going to be done Monday, right?
The state says they have 2 more hours of direct. Max has about a day of cross, so it's possible she could float into Tuesday morning.
Okay.
And then we go into directed verdict. I mean, I have a huge amount of work this weekend, just a huge amount of work.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it because the charges, the charge conference, everything. It's just enormous. People don't realize, I'm going to say it again, the life of a lawyer in one of these trials, especially one this long, just gets pummeled. It is how you even come here, Doug, and answer questions, and you're still your affable self. And we're going to look at some of your affability in the courtroom too, which is so important to your client because you have the credibility with the jury that gives it to your client. But it pummels your personal life, your family life, everything. And everyone brags on defense lawyers until you need one. But Doug is a wonderful example about somebody who has these incredible vignettes. Please follow him on TikTok. Please follow him on his Insta X page and his X page. He has 2 of them. He has an Instagram and he has an X Twitter, I'll say. And he gives these wonderful vignettes into life, which everyone should listen to. So I'll say that again. I've been plugging them every day.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I do that because people are kind of curious what your life is like as a defense attorney. So recently it's been this trial mostly, but I talk about other things when I go do bond hearings, when I go do whatever. And I mean, to give some insights, I hope, into what's going on with the criminal justice system.
Yeah. Pretty Eyes has a great question. She stole my question, but it's not exactly crazy to come up with this question. We want to know what you can tell us about your defense. We know you're going to be very successful with your directed verdicts, but assuming something is left of the case, can you share with us anything at all about the plan for the defense?
Outside of the cross-examination that we've been doing for the past year, I don't believe at this point that I have a need to call any of my witnesses. We have a significant number of witnesses, lined up that we could use, but at this point, and this is no secret, I don't know that I've publicly said it before, so maybe it's breaking news, but I haven't kept it hidden from the prosecution that at least at this point, I don't plan on calling any witnesses. I'm heavily tempted to call a lyrics expert for the purposes of just dispelling all of the false notions and propaganda put on by the state. And I want to do it sadly, it's really more for public benefit of debunking this, but I don't think I need to do it for my client. And I don't, and because of that, I am refraining from doing it. As much as on a personal level, I really want that lyrics expert to get up there and explain what lyrics and rap music and how the industry works. So I'd love to do that, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
That's funny because when we said that yesterday, right?
Yes, we were talking about it, and we
said-
thought maybe that reinforces the ridiculousness of relying on lyrics as quote evidence. So maybe it's better not to refocus on that.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm kind of torn about it, and I think there is, and you guys can tell me if you agree or not. I think it's powerful to get up there and say, given what's been presented, we don't need to call any witnesses.
Yeah, yeah,
it is. It is
critical.
It is. The only thing I say, and I always I teach this too when I teach it up at the trial advocacy workshop, is that sometimes putting on your case gives a jury, but it's not. It's fact specific, case specific. That little tidbit in the jury room that they can argue with. Look, they called somebody who said this, and therefore it's against that. So it gives them that tidbit. But that's not this case because they've had 2 years of this. They're going to go in there and decide what they already made up their mind. In my opinion, that's
I think so too. And I don't want to keep them any longer.
And they're done. Right, they're done. Right, they're tired.
And a lot of the real, how do I put it? Not meritorious, but the things that directly address the lyrics issue that I needed this lyrics expert to address, I got in through 1E Lee. 1E Lee testified about how the labels get involved in pushing a particular persona, how the labels get involved in modifying lyrics, that it's not purely what the artist comes up with, how 1E Lee testified that not everything he does is autobiographical and that he has creative thought. So I was able to use 1E Lee for a lot of that. And I'm hoping, of course, I'll use a lot of that in closing. And I'm hoping that having a state's witness get up there and testify to those things I wanted the expert to get in will be great. I think that'll be pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, very powerful. And
I
just want to give a shout out.
Good idea. Go ahead.
Shout out to Dee Dee. Dear Doug, please put a Post-it note in front of Max and make sure he uses that mic. LOL. I don't want to miss a thing. All right. So everyone has fans here, and
here's what I've noticed, Doug. I've noticed this since the reconfiguration. You're now in a more normal environment where microphones are less important. So when you were in the back of the church, I mean, you're way back there. You were constantly having to use the mics just to be heard. But now, for those that are most important, and it ain't the TV audience, it's everybody in the courtroom and in the well of the court, you can probably hear one another. So I've noticed less diligence in people getting on the microphones.
Well, let me address this by saying Max is well aware that everyone wants his microphone on and that you cannot always hear him on the feed. And so Max is in control of his microphone and he will turn it on and off as suits his needs to defend his client in court.
That's really good. He's
more focused on the courtroom than the feed, and that's actually exactly where he should be.
Exactly.
The problem with leaving the microphone on is just the risk of picking up. Our clients are heavily involved in their defense, and I'm always concerned, as I'm sure Max is, although we haven't discussed it, of the mic picking up a stray comment. I know the mic was picking me up the other day when I was talking to Mr. Kokomo, and a deputy came up to me and let me know about that.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, should we go look at this video? Let's look at this video. Whether you can comment on it. Certainly, we are not trying to invade the attorney-client privilege here, but tell us what you can about what's happening here.
I wish I could tell you and recall what we were talking about. I would love to know what that moment was. We have a lot of conversations about some of the nonsense that goes on in the courtroom. And I don't know what that was. There's kind of, in high school, your senior year, and you've got like senioritis and it's May. and things get a little more casual. And I think that's what's going on. Like we're nearing the end, and who knows what we were cutting up about. I mean, there's also a feeling that we're doing well in this case right now. So there's a little bit of a lighter feel in the court.
Yeah. So the Madeira Beach caregiver says, "What's with the fist bump yesterday?"
We'll have a few fist bumps after some good moments or a nice cross or two,
Yeah.
or Max might get in a good point, and so we'll have a little fist bump in there.
Yeah.
It's much less stressful than a few months ago when we were up front,
Yeah.
and a little more reserved. Plus, there's just a feeling in the courtroom the state is just working to get this over with and move on with their lives.
What about Miss Love not being there quite as much? Is that what do you know about that? What's the reason for that?
I haven't even noticed that. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed a change in the
You went through
in the
11
courtroom
witnesses.
atmosphere?
You went through 11 witnesses one day. I was like, I came in and said, this is like a real trial now. I mean, it's 11 witnesses got to understand, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Like boom, boom, boom. We're getting through them. Adam Abate, I'm sorry, Christian Atkins has always been pretty good about moving at a deliberate pace, and Miss Hilton has certainly picked up her pace, and Adam Abate always moves at a pretty good clip. So yeah, we're just flying through the witnesses, and I love it. I love it. I just want to get this to a jury and let my client go home.
I was going to ask Linda. Go ahead. You have something?
No. Go ahead.
I'm looking not all that far down the road anymore, and I'm thinking about time constraints and what's going to happen. And what about closings? Has there been any discussion about whether there's going to be limited time for that?
I'm sorry about that. Can you repeat it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I forgot to put my phone on.
Are you guys going to be limited for closings, time limits?
This is a great question. Under statute, we're each given 2 hours, 2-hour time limits on closing. I do not need more than 2 hours. So I would really like to stick to those statutory amounts. I don't know if I'm going to get 2 hours, Max is going to get 2 hours, and the state will get 2 hours. I'm not exactly sure. We haven't discussed this yet, or if Max and I will be forced to share our 2 hours, but I certainly am going to argue for the state to be limited to 2 hours.
That was my real concern. It wasn't you guys. It was, if unbridled, what the state might have in mind.
I mean, maybe
like
it's
reading the indictment.
Maybe it's in my interest to give the state 40 hours after we only need 2.
This is another great question, African D. We on the program last night, we went through a report, which we're going to go through again in more detail after you leave us tonight.
Yeah,
the DOJ report. Does the DOJ report about Fulton County Jail help you in any way? Because I did notice that there's a staffing du jour, and it's the worst place I've ever read about.
It is. It's not going to help me in this case in any way. If this would have been a month or 2 months ago, I would have renewed. Well, actually, my motion is still pending for bond, but I would have brought that motion up. And I have to tell you, I actually had that in an email from yesterday that I was getting ready to hit send and go to the court and do an emergency motion for bond. But since this thing is going to be over in 2 weeks, I did not want to tax the judge's patience with me. So I did not bring it up. But in other cases where my clients do not have bond in Fulton County, I fully plan on going back and asking for bond, or where the bond amounts are too high, going back and renewing motions to lower bond. I just can't do it right now. But you can expect to see that DOJ report in every, I would hope, in every bond motion before a judge in Fulton County.
I would think so.
Well, even like when little Woody was testifying and others were testifying that they'd say anything to get out of Rice, the Rice jail, that kind of supports it. That's like, anyone who read that would say anything to get out of there, especially the guy who got stabbed when somebody came up to a pipe as he's sleeping.
Yeah.
So my question is, and I've only read part of it, is to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District. So what now? Now you've got the goods. What's the plan?
Do I dare talk politics? Once the new administration comes into being, nothing. First of all, even if the current administration would have stayed there, I doubt much, if anything, would have happened. Maybe something would have happened. I would hope suit would have been brought. But I think I would imagine that once a new administration takes over, zero will happen. And I hope that's not the case. I would hope that at least the incoming administration's hatred of all things Fulton County would prompt some movement. I would love to see something happen. Rachel Kaufman, who I saw today and has a 1987 action pending against Rice Street, is certainly going to use that in her case. So I think private parties will use it. Unfortunately, 1987 doesn't provide for a private attorney general action, which is really what would get things moving against Fulton County. But Fulton County, Rice Street, if y'all don't know, and I'm sure you probably do if you're preparing to talk about that report, it had previously been under federal judge jurisdiction with a consent order. And I don't remember how many years ago it went off, but I think there needs to be a consent order in place. You need to have a federal judge overseeing it. The county needs to be ordered, frankly, ordered to raise taxes or do whatever it takes to get a bond in to fix the jail conditions. It is a death trap in there.
Sounds like it.
What were the number of stabbings in 2023 according to that report? Do you remember that number?
I can't remember the number.
Over 300.
Oh my
Over
gosh.
300.
One a day.
So,
One a day, right?
yeah,
Basically.
over 300 less. There were more stabbings. Let me see if I have this right.
And they have violent incidents that are in the multiple hundreds as well.
I believe more stabbings in a month in Rice Street than in the entire Miami-Dade jail, which has 1.5 times the population over a year.
Unbelievable.
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 It's just, and
It's inhumane.
I don't blame this. I don't blame Patrick Labatt, the sheriff. I blame the citizens of the county. I'm calling you guys out. I blame our county commission for not funding it. I blame judges for not granting bond as much as they should. I blame the DA's office for requesting bond for people that should be able to, or for opposing bond when it should be granted. I blame the Georgia State Legislature for passing legislation this past year, increasing the number of offenses requiring a cash bond versus signature bond. So there is so much. I blame myself for not speaking out against it the past 2 years. There's so much blame to go around. And
well, you've been a little busy
to take action.
Yeah, but you've been a little busy the past couple years. Okay.
I have been, but I can't just blame others. I have a voice.
So we did have another question from Dee Dee. What is the order for the closing arguments?
So the state gets to go. Well, theoretically, the state can go first. We go in the middle, and then the state gets to go last, and they can split up their time as they see fit between them. There is some case law in Georgia that the state is required to go first, but I don't know what Judge Whitaker will do. I doubt if the state says no, we just want to save all our time for the end, I doubt she'll make them go first. So the answer is, oh my gosh, I don't know.
That would be odd. I mean, in your experience, isn't that a little weird for the prosecution to defer to the defense and then just pile on everything at the end?
I count on nothing to be not weird in this case.
Okay.
I think I have a right for them to go first and then for me to be able to respond before they go last, according to case law, but we'll see what happens.
Oh,
yeah, see, I'm from New Jersey, where I was a mini prosecutor and grew up where, the defense had to go first and the state followed in closing arguments. And it really is a disadvantage, really. Just an absolute disadvantage because you don't know what they're going to say. I don't mind the federal system of the two closings because at least you get some voice.
I mean, they have the burden. They get to go last. That I get, but to defer and put the defense up front, I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Madeira Beach, caregiver. Thank you for joining. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So the weekend is going to be filled then primarily with what? Prepping for some cross and getting the instructions in shape.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to continue to work on my closing. I don't have very much cross that I'm going to have to do of investigator Viverito. So fortunately, all of that is falling in Max's lap. So to try to help him out, I'm going to try to carry the burden of the jury instructions and the jury verdict form. So working on that, working on directed verdict, because I think that Judge Whitaker is a very academically minded judge, given her past work in appeals. So I'm going to try to get case law together for my directed verdict motions. I may even do some things in writing for her. And then just preparing for the charge conference. It's just I have so much to do. It's just I can't even. It's overwhelming when I think about it. I just have to sit down and start moving one by one through everything.
But we'll just keep trying to keep you going and keep your voice out here in all the forums, because I know you have your own forums, but in other forums.
Thank you.
So because we have a lot of followers who are, are with you and are with your client, and want the state, when they have a case, not to be unfair, and to meet their burden. And just the unfairness has been just what has come through to this, and your dignity and your client's dignity has really come through.
Well, assuming that we have these 3 prosecutors through the rest of the case that we have now, Abate, Adkins, and Hilton, I think that as a team, of course, they've got some others that help them. I don't want to neglect them. I think that as a team, they're very fair. I can trust them. And so I have some confidence in the fairness of their arguments going forward. I don't know who from their side is doing closing, which is the question I always get.
You don't think Ms. Love might pop in and da-da-da-da?
It's a distinct possibility, but I don't know. I don't know.
You just don't know. Yeah. So the plan is, just to sum up. I'm sorry, Michael. Do you want to?
Yeah, before I forget, I'm sorry. I had this question because you mentioned the verdict, and I can envision a nightmare of a verdict form with so many counts, and even with just the 2 remaining defendants. What thoughts do you have on that, and how do you guard against something that creates an inconsistent verdict?
I want a detailed verdict form that will give us a record that we're going to need on appeal. There's some law in Georgia.
If there's a conviction.
If there's a conviction. And there's some law in Georgia that on RICO, if I don't have a detailed verdict form, I'm going to have problems on appeal. So at least on the RICO count, I'm going to need some level of detail there. And then I'm going to have to fight off whatever straitjacket Mr. Floyd is going to want to put on that verdict form that would theoretically make it almost impossible for the jury to come down in our favor. So I have just a huge task in front of me with kind of the legend of Georgia RICO working for the state.
Yeah.
But the jury, when the jury gets those charges, they can read all of them, but if they think that your client, it hasn't been proven against your case. Now, what worries me is you have so many possibilities. They may say, oh, we've heard, even though they still tell anybody else, that everyone else got probation, so we can find him guilty on something and let him go, not probation, but house arrest or whatever it is you want to call it, whatever it is they want to call it.
Well, of course, my fear is, I guess, a similar fear to one that you guys have had, and I don't remember if I've discussed it with you, which is some type of compromise verdict,
right?
Where they come back with something that sounds minor, like gang activity, but is as a recidivist, someone who's been given a recidivist notice, the judge has no choice but to sentence to the maximum. Now, hopefully, it wouldn't be 20 years in custody. Hopefully, it would be 20 years probation.
Right.
But the jury does not know that my client is sentenced to the max if they come back with a guilty on any of these charges.
Wow. So Dee Dee has another question. I admire you and Max for the fight you are in on behalf of your clients. Really comment. I'm so proud to have met the two. A victory is right around the corner. Hang in there. And that's a nice pump for you guys.
And it's always a pleasure for us when some of the folks that are supporting us come by the courtroom or stop us on the sidewalk and give us their good wishes and their support. And we really do love it. And we pass that on to our clients as well.
Wow. All right, Doug, we know you have a lot of work to do, and we don't want to, time, but we'll look forward to getting through the charge conference, hearing your summations this week, and let's hope that your client gets to go home for Thanksgiving and that you get to go home for Thanksgiving.
Let's hope so. So thank you. Thank you for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to speak to you both.
Thanks.
Always a pleasure, buddy. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. So it's, I can see it, the end. It's in sight. I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, now it's interesting that he gave us the lowdown about he said there's no witnesses that
he's that on here. Can we have the breaking news sound? Oh, we don't have the breaking
news.
Sound.
We need a breaking news. Dizzy Doug Weinstein says he's not going to call any witnesses on his case, and he's going to rest. He's going to do the directed verdicts, and he doesn't. I don't know whether Max Shart will. We didn't ask him that question.
No,
but
not sure he would have felt comfortable responding to that.
Right.
But I'm glad we talked about that. That verdict form is going to be a mess. We've all seen cases, ours and those we've covered, where it leads to appeal, inconsistency in the verdict itself. If it's too general, there's technically a general verdict and a special verdict. This is the specialist of special verdicts,
Right.
And it's going to be critical how they draft that thing. That doesn't just come out of a form book, And
we also learned tonight, the first time, that the Georgia is bringing in their prosecution expert on RICO to argue it, Mr. Floyd, right?
Yep.
So and he's considered the expert by the judges and all. So we learned that. We learned there's going to be, and we learned that there's likely to be a verdict before Thanksgiving.
Yep, especially if there's only half a defense case. If that, we don't even know. We may have seen it all.
Turn down my volume, Tony says. Tony, the problem we have right now, and thank you for mentioning this, is that my microphone has broke, and I am up in the sticks of the country.
They don't have microphones there.
So we're using the sound off my computer. So Michael Bryan actually controls my sound. So
that sounds so wrong. Let's see. Let me go into. Let me see if I can. If there's a limiter I can put on yours, because I do not have that on mine. Not that we have different controls here, but let me just see if I can edit your settings. Automatically adjust your volume. Let's try it. Let's see if that's better. Nope, okay, I can still hear you. No. Okay, that may be better. Let's give that a spin.
Thank you, Tony Winslow. We'll try to work on it before we get back next week.
I think that is a little better. I think it's not spiking as much.
Okay, great.
Should we talk about this for just a couple of minutes since we got into it?
Yeah.
So I get this, and I didn't want to kill a number of trees, but it's 97 pages, and obviously it's a lot of reading. So I literally just started just kind of flipping through it, probably looking for pictures. I'm always looking for pictures in the books I read. So I just flopped it open. For those who have their own, please follow along. This is page 39, and it talks about the jail's taser policy. Okay, and let me shed a little light on my own subject here, because it's a little dark in this little corner here. We found that officers use tasers unreasonably when encountering people with behavioral health needs. But the taser policy explicitly authorizes officers to discharge tasers at, quote, emotionally disturbed persons exhibiting violent behavior, end quote, or against, quote, suicidal persons, end quote, without requiring that such people pose an immediate danger to themselves or others. That's my dog chiming in.
I'm sorry, your dog.
You see, open
this
the
is
door.
a great moment. I'm sorry. This is one of those moments like when the kids came in and the guy who was on TV. Your dog just pushed open the door.
I didn't latch it because I knew if he wanted to come on, pop up and say hi. I knew if he wanted to
push open the door.
Now, you may be asking, why is he wearing this little Red Riding Hood? I'll tell you why. It's a weird story. He shakes his head so violently, he's got a little cut on the top of his ear. We are leaving in a week for about 10 days. And when we board him, if it's not much better, it's not healed enough, he's not going to get that, this kind of crazy attention. So we're trying to make sure it's healed before we take off. Right, bud? Right?
We need to have a little clip.
Yes, I understand.
A little clip just of him coming in. That was a great.
Yeah, I knew not to latch the door. I knew it because
Amazon.
he would pop in. Okay, let me get back to this.
Wait. I love your blazer. It's gorgeous. I love me too shirts and blazers. Yes, this is from Amazon actually.
Blessed Mom from Texas. Where in Texas?
Whereabouts? We're in Texas, Blessed Mom. While Michael's looking for that.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, where was I? Okay, so taser, unlimited, it seems, taser use is all right. And then the other thing I found in the same page, again, page 39 of this report, the jail has a use of force procedure that allows officers to use the, quote, amount of non-deadly force necessary to regain control of his or her duty, task, or assignment when someone interrupts their work. And then the report says this directive erroneously suggests that officers may use force as a tool to save time rather than addressing a specific threat posed. I mean, that was, I didn't have to search to find that. It was just, let me just whip through a few pages. So I'm afraid of what we can see in the other, 97 plus pages that are in there. But
well, it was pretty horrific, right? It was pretty horrific.
It's brutal. I mean, just the stats, the raw stats are unbelievable. The number of injuries and the type of injuries and the deaths. Yeah.
I see Austin, blessed mom protects us.
Oh, Austin. Oh, great.
Austin. Yeah.
My daughter went to UT, so I spent some time down there in weird Austin. Stay weird.
The Leander area.
Okay. That area is growing like crazy. It's now kind of the Silicon Valley of the Southwest.
Hey, Missy, you're in Austin too. Maybe you guys can get together. Right?
Hey.
It's great. Beautiful town.
Yep.
All right.
It's fun.
So yeah, no, that
Lake Travis, very cool. Yep.
Everyone really actually should read that because we all talk about how great law enforcement is, and they are great. But then you see something like this in the jails, and it's people don't have any rights, any dignities. It put in there, and as we said, the dentist with the veneers, right? He's in there with all this. He can say, "Excuse me, officer, can I?" And he'll say, "You're interrupting my workload," and tase him according to that report.
Yeah, or use any force just short of deadly force. So. I'm sure there's a staffing issue, and I'm sure that'll be pointed out in there. And so when you have staffing issues and all these COs, correctional officers, constantly feel like they're outnumbered, then they're going to be overly aggressive to everybody.
Right.
Because they see it spiraling out of control. And then it's, some sort of, nature instinct to just try to regain control. And it's just a horrible circumstance. So yeah. I can't wait to see what they say. And Doug's comment was interesting about the administration. I mean, obviously it's a federal operation that this comes from, not the jail that's run locally. So what the feds may do to put their thumb on those folks is really what I think is most interesting. I'd like to hear something other than, I don't know, I don't know what we did the report. It's on them.
How about giving people bond or bail, as we call it here in the Northeast, and letting some of the lesser crimes go out and not say everybody is a danger? Yeah, that would be a start.
That'd be a start. Tell the veneer guy, the dental veneer guy. I mean, okay.
If he ever gets out, I'd like to have him on the show here because I imagine he's got some horrific stories to tell because he's not used to that.
I'm afraid to hear, how or if he survives.
That's a bit horrible. It's a horrible thought.
Yeah.
Horrible thought.
Okay, so you want to talk about Penny? You want to stay in Georgia real quickly and talk about?
Well, let me. I have to give a mea culpa here, Michael. Not a really mea culpa. I have to apologize yesterday to my Jets, my New York Jets, which as you know, I'm a season ticket holder. I talked about how they sent a private investigator because the private investigator who came said it was a Jets matter. All right. It turns out that after I did that scathing letter I all talked about yesterday, I got this. This would be great if we ever have we do have a members only, but I'm going to keep you all just because I have to apologize to my Jets. I got a letter back from the Michael J. Ramos partner, senior managing director and chief risk and compliance officer. I guess they had to report this to their insurance carrier, probably, of Nardello and Company. I wanted to clear up a misunderstanding. My firm is not working on behalf of the New York Jets. Oh, really? Well, then you should have said it was a New York Jets matter. We've been retained by a law firm to investigate an incident which took place at a Jets game on September 19th. We believe that you may have been a witness to that incident, hence we sought to speak to you. My apologies for any confusion about that. Well, I don't know how they think I was a witness to any incident, but that's beside the point.
Second, how did they find you?
Right. And then not know I'm a lawyer, right? Right.
Yeah.
Second, we did not mean to cause any alarm in our approach to you. In our experience, an in-person approach is often the most successful method in conducting interviews. Yeah, if you want to try to get people on the street, not knowing what they're talking about and not giving the proper information, and
intimidate them and pressure them,
and pressure them, and you as a male investigator with knowing that you're going to interview a female. Not that I can't hold my own, guys. Okay. But, on a day that's a day off, yeah, I kind of know what you do with investigators. So I just want to keep you up there. I apologize, New York Jets, for implying this was on you. It is not. And we'll go from there, and I'll keep you all updated. By the way, gifted one Justice Served membership.
Thank you. Here comes drama.
Here comes drama. Thank you. You gifted a Justice Served membership. Thank you. Here comes drama.
So I think by the tone of that response, you scared the hell out of them. That's what it looks like to me. You just scared them.
Yeah, now I'm deciding whether or not I should respond to this or just say, or tell the New York Jets, hey, by the way, I got this, but this doesn't solve them going to do this to somebody else. And that's
here's what's interesting, because I'm looking at the wording they used when they approached, and they said this is a Jets matter. Right. Well, that's arguably true. They didn't say we represent the Jets in a matter. They said this is about a Jets matter. Well, that's technically true, but certainly designed to mislead.
Right. That's exactly what I felt too. So we'll continue. I'll continue to keep you updated about my experience with dealing with an investigator for somebody who says there was an altercation or an incident. I think they mentioned it was an altercation when they spoke to when they called up from downstairs in security. But we'll continue on. It's kind of interesting to be on the other side of this and see what's happening.
Yeah, I feel sorry for them to tangle with you.
Wrong person.
It'd be a whole different kind of altercation. So, okay. So you want to do some Penny?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, let's do that. Obviously, big stuff we talked about yesterday was the Emmys report. Here's really the bottom line with the Emmy. The Emmy finished today, including Cross, in the opinion of Dr. Cynthia Harris. She did the autopsy. She's a medical examiner, not just on paper. She did the work. The actions of Daniel Penny were the, quote, sole cause of Jordan Neely's death in this strangling, choking that took place on the subway on May 1st of 2023. That's powerful. And the jury's going to walk away into the weekend with, that thought and her analysis kind of reverberating in their brain pans there until they get back for the defense case on Monday. So
it's a horrendous case, and I want to give a trigger warning because we're going to discuss it in a little more detail right now for those that are going to be upset when we discuss it. Just to know, in case you decide you want to leave, but I know Madeira Beach Caregiver just gifted 5 Justice Served memberships. Thank you very much.
Yes, appreciate that.
So, Michael, there were some specific, pretty horrendous things that she mentioned. What were they?
Well, we talked about most of them yesterday, the petechia that was found, but you were talking about scratches, because we were talking yesterday about what actions and reactions Jordan Neely may or may not have had, because the video shows one thing. Her analysis suggests maybe something else. So get into that I was talking specifically about whether there was an effort for Neely to remove Penny's arm, because you don't see that on video, but she seems to think it happened.
Right. Well, we saw apparently a video that may not have been the complete video from what I'm now reading. Okay. Now, I don't know about that, but I thought we saw the guts of the video. Right. And she says that the jury also looked at, she was analyzing images of Neely's body from the autopsy first, and she noted bleeding inside his throat and pools of blood in his eyes. The jurors also then looked at photos of Neely's neck, which showed red scratch marks with the photos of Neely's neck. Okay, now he's the decedent. Harris said those were likely self-inflicted as Neely tried to remove Penny's arm. So in other words, you try to grab or do something, or you flail or whatever and all. So you don't see the arms coming up to the neck.
No, you see a lot of this, a lot of but not like, So her opinion is that happened. Right. The jury's going to have to weigh that against what they see. And we knew that the first 2 minutes, at least, leading up to the chokehold, is not on video, because we don't see him taken to the ground, which we know is the first thing that Daniel Penny did. Nobody was rolling at that point. From what I get from witnesses, people were fleeing at that point. or getting as far away from them as they could in the train car while it moved. It was only moving for 30 seconds between two stations. And during that crazy 30 seconds, people got as far away from this altercation as they could.
But think about it. Think about it. Somebody grabs you around the neck, right? Your first reaction could be to go.
No doubt.
And that's not on video, right?
No doubt. And then by the time he takes him to the ground, he's maybe so subdued that he's past that.
It's horrible. Thank you, Kat Not Williams, gifted 5 Justice Served memberships. She also showed diagrams from textbooks and explained medical terms like hemorrhage and capillaries, right? She pointed out moments when Neely's appearance suggesting his body was starving for oxygen, like his abdomen rising and falling, his face turning purple, and his veins bulging. The medical examiner also noted pools of liquid that formed on Neely's pants, which she said were likely urine excreted during the death process. And I think we talked about some of this with Joseph Scott Morgan the other day, forensic death investigator. Thank you, Just Joy. I just got a membership from Kat Not Williams.
Congratulations. Good for Kat Not Williams. Very nice.
Gifted a membership from My Favorite Daytime channel to watch My Favorite Nighttime channel. Thank you very much. So, Michael, you were in the courtroom, when the medical examiner started the testimony. This is kind of horrific.
It is, and very credible. Seemed to me the key is that she did the autopsy. She's not somebody that just came in. A lot of places, not New York City, of course, the coroner doesn't even have to be a doctor, right? It's an elected or appointed position. She was in there. She was like Michael Baden. She was in up to her elbows in the actual autopsy. So it's got to carry a lot of weight. And the most important thing she said, in my opinion, is even though she addressed the potential for the K2 synthetic cannabinoids being in his system, she discounted those. And so the jury hears the sole cause, that's powerful.
Yeah, and then we also talked a little bit about sickle cell, and I think matter of fact, we spoke to my husband about this, right? After let you all in on it.
He kind of poo-pooed that as well.
Well, the same as the medical examiner. That sickle cell trait, it's benign, and the fact that we all have cells that sickle after death. When they're starved for oxygen, they start sickling.
Interesting.
And perfect example of that. They couldn't properly carry blood. So, but its sickle cell trait is different than sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease would be one thing, but trait is not going to cause you to just drop dead. You're outside the car, you're fine. You come inside the car, you get a chokehold, then you're dead. It's not because of sickle cell trait.
That one thing you mentioned about in the video, what she described as him, struggling for breath. That's what Penny would say were his bursts and attempts to get free. Now, they may both be right because he's trying to get free so he can breathe.
Right.
But Penny's interpreting that as continued threat.
Is that what the Marines were teaching him? Do you know?
Well, that's a whole that whole thing is very different because the blood choke was being improperly done because his hand was on the top of the head instead of the back of the head. So this is what we're talking now about, the Marine instructor who actually trained Penny, who testified yesterday in this hold. And he said he did it wrong, but not wrong like it was less harmful, but wrong that it could be more harmful. Because if it were done properly, in this witness's opinion, then Neely would have been out in between 8 and 13 seconds. But because it was being done without the proper technique, he continued to stay alive and struggle for a longer period of time.
So then let me ask you this. She testified that oxygen was likely cut off in part by the pressure on the one side of Neely's neck, but could also have been blocked from pressure under Neely's chin, which could have pushed Neely's tongue or the other tissue into his throat, and that would require only a small amount of force. Does that have to do with the improper chokehold or not?
That's interesting. That wasn't addressed by the Marine. He didn't address that at all. She's just basing it on what she sees on the video, I guess, and what she found in the autopsy. The Marine didn't mention that if you do it right, this happens to your tongue or your mouth. If you do it wrong, this happens to your tongue or your mouth. He didn't talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, it's a very important case. It's a very difficult case. I think for both sides, there's a bunch of difficulty. I mean, when I read her testimony, I had been like, I don't know if they can get a conviction on this case. It's very hard, right? But then when I read this testimony, it was so horrific about how he struggled for all this time that I was like, well, when people are saying let him loose because he could die, that maybe you should be listening to them as much as you listened to them when they said, he's, I was scared or whatever they were.
It certainly has enough George Floyd overlap to get people thinking about what happened there. Although very different circumstance. That was even a knee on the neck. So that mechanism was somewhat different. Because the defense is starting on Monday, and there's still a question of whether Daniel Penny will take the stand. One of the key reasons he may not is because he gave that police interview. So we got just a quick handful of clips of that interview. And I think it's important, not just what he says, but how he says it, and whether he seems to be arrogant, flippant, disregarding what happened, the seriousness of that. So let's watch this and see. I did this to you last time, I think, where I thought you were seeing it and you weren't. Is that right?
Right. That's correct. Not seeing it. Well, you want to call Domino back in?
And I kind of came like this.
Okay. Did you apply pressure, didn't you?
No, I just wanted to keep him from getting to people. I'm not trying to kill the guy.
Right.
I'm not a confrontational guy. In the Marine Corps, I felt the need to step in.
Yeah.
There's women and children on the train.
Did you feel like someone's life was in danger?
100%.
Okay, so rougher to hear, but basically, I never intended to hurt the guy. Remember this, he did not know, there's the Marine instructor there, the guy with the flat top and the beard. And this is Rosenberg, is that one of the artists that you're aware? Was it Rosenberg?
I think it was Christine Cornell who did these.
Well, no, this is
Jane Rosenberg. Okay. Jane Rosenberg. I'm sorry, Jane Rosenberg. Yeah, there's two courtroom artists in that courtroom.
There's the doctor
Cornell and Jane Rosenberg. This is what they're the two most famous ones that are still presently alive.
Yeah, and
that's
they're
pretty
both
amazing. And
they're both in there every day, and they're both using binoculars. I mentioned that the other day. They're both using both.
Seriously?
They just look so funny that they've got the binoculars up, looking at the detail that they're going to include.
It's a dying art, but let me tell you that it's some of those courtroom sketches really show.
They bring it to life. They really do
bring it to life, and they're incredible. Both Christine Cornell and Jane Rosenberg, incredible artists.
So again, his statements, which were harder to hear for the many technical reasons of, he's in a room, so it's echoey. Even in court, it was not as clear as it would have been nice to have. But guess what? The jurors have transcripts, so they're able to follow along. It's interesting too. I notice how some people are very just tied to the transcript, and almost as if they're following along. Others hold it, but they'd rather watch and listen. It's very interesting how people take in the information. So he's talking about how he was afraid. He did not know at the time of this interview that Jordan Neely had died. He thought he passed out as a result of the chokehold, and they were going to revive him. And so when he volunteers to go down and make this have this interview. You hear the high points we tried to mention, and that was that he was afraid for other people in the car. There were women and children in this car. And the officer says, the detective says, you thought you were trying to protect them? And he said, 100%. So what do you think about his demeanor? As best you could tell.
Now that I know that he was, I thought he was pretty cavalier when I first watched it, but now that I know that he didn't know that Neely had died, maybe he's not so cavalier, but he thinks he's doing a good job, a good deed, and he's willing to talk to the officers about it. But some jurors may look at that and say, hey, he has a savior syndrome and he shouldn't have been doing what he's doing. Or certainly when people were telling him to let up, you're going to kill the guy, maybe he should have listened. So I don't know, Michael, you were watching the jury. What do you think?
Everybody's one guy seemed a little bit checked out, it seemed to me. And by the way, an update on the Upper East Side, she had a lovely brown bowler of some sort. I'm sure that's not what the hat is called, but she's worn now a fedora and a beret, and then this kind of bowler looking type hat. She's very attentive. She may be 80. She's really, when I see her come and go from the jury box, she's pretty slow. And right behind her, just because of the order, is the guy I've dubbed Daniel Penny Jr., who just looks so much like him. And he's a young, 25, 35. And there's always a huge gap because he's got to stay behind her and wait while everybody else has already cleared the building. So they're into it. When they showed some of the the more intense video. And what they did with some of the experts, both the military guy and the doctor, is they pushed in really tight on, you know, the face and the arm against the throat. His dad, you know, has got his position figured out. He's almost immediately looking down anytime that kind of stuff is displayed. On these are big screens. We're talking 70, 75-inch TV screens, one right in front of the gallery next to the jury box, and then flipped the other way so the jurors can see it is another giant TV, and then by the witness stand, another one. So as I'm watching them watch the videos, I noticed that only 3 or 4 of the people nearest the gallery video screen are looking at, and that'd be like right here, bam. The others, even though the TV is much closer on their left, they're looking to the right, as if, you know, maybe to get greater perspective, or maybe not be, maybe it's, you know, maybe some people don't sit in the front row of the theater, because that has to be what it feels like when that giant screen is right there in the first 2 rows. It's just too much, especially for some of this emotional footage. So anyway, to your question, which I've danced around, you know, as we know, they're all attentive. They're taking their notes. I don't see anybody checked out except the guy in the third seat on the top row. He seems to slump a little bit more than others, but maybe he's just a slouchy guy. I don't know.
Yeah, so you never know what a jury is going to do. They're going to have 2 charges to consider when they get this. One's going to be the manslaughter, which carries a sentence of up to 15 years in New York, and the other is going to be the careless, the negligent killing, right?
Yep. And the
so
difference is reckless or negligent. That's really
So
that's really the difference. And I was telling when I was talking to that Sun reporter,
that's 4 years. That's 4 years.
Yeah, that's 4 years max. So what I had told this reporter was, I said, you know, the way this case is so divisive, I could easily see that kind of compromise verdict. We were just talking to Doug about that, where, you know, even those that feel he didn't do anything wrong could choke down a criminally negligent homicide, because they won't know the sentences, but they'll see it as a far less punishment than maybe some of the folks want, manslaughter. And it's possible, you know, he's got no priors. He could get probation or a very short incarceration with a 4-year max.
Yeah, it's be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, he could walk with a probation or suspended sentence. I would not be surprised to see that.
So I don't know what the jury's going to do. I mean, I tell you, I was bothered. I was bothered the other day when Joe Scott Morgan was on talking about it. And I think he was bothered, and then I got bothered by the medical examiner. And before that, I was thinking, well, you know, they're going to put themselves in the shoes of the woman with the child. But then again, she's the one. There were so many people making comments to stop, let go of the pressure, let go of the pressure. So I just don't know. I don't know what I would do if I was on that jury, man. Yeah, no, it's a tough one. And remember, most of the evidence is in the form of these witness statements, right? It's not like something that, you know, they may get a transcript. We're not sure how they're going to allow readbacks and things of that sort, but it's not the same as a tangible, you know, piece of evidence. It's direct testimony. It's direct evidence, which we know is rare. Most cases don't have this much direct evidence. Right. So, and speaking of that, if you don't mind me drifting off just for a moment to the Lake and Riley case, because it's in Georgia and it's underway. And this is, of course, the case against Jose Ibarra and the death of this nursing student. The trial began today. The defense chose to have a bench trial and waive the jury trial. What's your take on that? I don't think he had a chance in hell of getting an acquittal or even getting a reduced verdict with a jury. So I think that this may be one situation that you want to say, yeah, I'll take the judge. I'll take the judge. And maybe the judges in chambers had suggested, you won't have the trial tax if you go with me, right? What's a trial tax? A trial tax is you get a worse verdict, you get a worse sentence if you go to trial in front of a jury. So I don't know, but I think that it lowers the temperature in a horrible case. Let's face it, this is a horrible case. She went out jogging. Not that any murder is not a horrible case. Young girl went out jogging. She's in college, and then she gets attacked, and she gets hit by a rock and killed. And her roommate goes to find her and finds her by finding her AirPod. Is a place that her phone is ringing. The inhumanity and the cruelty that we're seeing right now, to me, is just beyond belief. And I think that's what gets everyone riled. It's not that it's just the stranger on stranger homicides. that are very concerning to people. Not the family ones, they understand. They don't like it, but they understand. But the stranger on stranger makes us all feel unsafe.
Yeah, and I won't dwell too much on the illegal alien. I'm sorry, unauthorized alien. That's what's used in the code. Unauthorized alien. I won't dwell on that angle. But
I won't, because that's the dog whistle, right? The question is did he do it? No matter who he is.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I don't think they're going to have trouble proving that. But the reason I mentioned this, the reason I got sidetracked onto this, had to do with circumstantial versus direct evidence. And I was watching somebody, it was an expert that you and I both know, and I won't name, but they were talking about the opening statement made by the defense, arguing that, yes, there's no doubt Laken Riley died and it's horrible, but everything connecting her death to my client, Mr. Ibarra, is circumstantial evidence. Well, as we know, that's quite often the case, because direct evidence is a very narrow type of evidence. This expert had a problem with that opening statement, saying, well, what's he talking about? They have DNA. That's direct evidence. What? DNA is not direct evidence. It's great circumstantial evidence. It ain't direct evidence. So take your experts for what they're worth.
Yeah, well, we try to give
us
you the
included.
Best we can do.
Sorry,
us included. And we've been mistaken too.
Sure, sure. Nobody's perfect.
We have.
I just thought that was kind of an odd, to hang that out there. I thought was kind of odd.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you all. 14 new members tonight, I can see. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends. And, Michael and I will be back on some sort of schedule next week. Definitely Monday, maybe some another ones. But I have a family member, a sister who's getting surgery next week. So I'm going to be out of the box for 2 days. And Michael and his family have to see his son. So we'll try to work around our schedules. We'll get to you. And we know what's going to happen. That YSL is going to come in, that Penny's going to come in. Mm-hmm. But if we miss the actual days that they come in, we'll relax, because enjoy Thanksgiving with your families, and we'll be back at it after Thanksgiving. But we're going to have a couple things next week for you anyhow. Yeah, and we're going to find, when I hit the road, it won't be an official where in the world is justice, but I will be in some exotic places, reporting from them either directly about stuff going on there, or maybe just stuff going on here, but doing it from a remote location. So yeah, and Madeira Beach caregiver, good luck on your surgery, whatever it's for. It's always very simple until it's never simple. So I always worry. Right. So all right then. Well, I think we'll sign off then. I'm Michael Bryant. Try to do the right thing. And I'm Linda Kenny Baden, and we'll see you soon.